Hello and welcome to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers.
This is the podcast where every week we review a classic pro wrestling event from a streaming service.
That classic pro wrestling event could be a pay-per-view, a major television special, a major arena show, or in the case of this week's show, the biggest show of the year for what is one of the most well-known wrestling companies in the world, but it's at a time where things aren't going so great for them.
This is January 4th, 2006, Tokyo Dome show from New Japan Pro Wrestling. Tell us about the landscape of 2006. Tell us a little bit about where New Japan Pro Wrestling was itself.
Yes, and well, as you mentioned, January 4th, Tokyo Dome, a big annual date for New Japan Pro Wrestling. And at this point, Antonio Inoki, the legendary creator, owner of New Japan Pro Wrestling and the biggest star in Japan, had sold his shares of New Japan Pro Wrestling to the video game company Yuke's, and his son-in-law, Simon Inoki, was in charge of the day-to-day operations. This was a major transition period where Simon Inoki would not last long for good reason. They brought in a different person to run the day-to-day business operations shortly after this show. And the legendary Riki Choshu, one of the biggest stars in New Japan history and the former booker of the promotion, was brought back to be the booker with the goal of returning New Japan to its more traditional Japanese pro wrestling roots and away from their obsession, mostly Inoki's obsession, with MMA and the constant flood of MMA fighters coming in as terrible pro wrestlers who were squashing all of New Japan's top stars, not to mention the practice a little bit earlier in the decade of the 2000s in sending New Japan's top stars like Yuji Nagata to do legitimate, real MMA fights with very little training. Those fights almost always ended in disaster, destruction, and embarrassment for New Japan. So they were not at the forefront of the industry at this point. And the Tokyo Dome show itself, the traditional January 4th Tokyo Dome show itself, was in many ways in jeopardy. It was talked about. Dave Meltzer talks about in the Wrestling Observer newsletter in early 2006 that going into this show, the thought would be this would be the last time they would run January 4th. There was little evidence, he says, going into the day of this event that would be a wrong decision. Tickets once again moved very slowly for a lackluster lineup that had little going for it other than the many years that New Japan could sell the building out on what was the unofficial wrestling day in Japanese wrestling culture, basically the Japanese version of WrestleMania. The death of the tradition, I guess, would have been due to the decline of the company itself, as I mentioned, and the 6-year-old New Year's Eve's tradition of major MMA just a couple days before this show, taking almost all the major focus away from the event. However, when the dust cleared, Meltzer says there seemed to be a light at the end of the tunnel after this show, and there was suddenly talk of returning to the building, perhaps on January 4th, 2007. Editor's note, January 4th, 2007, when they did return to the Tokyo Dome, ended up being the first Wrestle Kingdom branded event, which is what the annual Tokyo Dome show is known as now, and is a major success for the company. Meltzer goes on to talk about that they only sold 10,000 tickets for this show in 2006, but they papered the entire Tokyo metropolitan area like crazy and ended up having 31,000 fans total in the building. But they said that the real sign everyone was pointing to was the, quote, incredible merchandise business. They apparently did well north of $500,000 in merchandise, indicating that the people who got in for free were spending money once they got in the building, and that it actually may have been a financially successful event, which for New Japan at Tokyo Dome had not happened in recent years. It's also noteworthy, Jeremy, that unlike now where they only ran the Tokyo Dome once a year, they were running it as many as 3 times a year. In the previous year, 2005, they ran it in October, where Brock Lesnar won the IWGP heavyweight title, and they also ran it in May. So they had a hard time adjusting to the changing landscape, I would say, but they're, like they said, seem to be maybe a light at the end of the tunnel at this point.
Yeah, paid attendance of only 10,000, absolutely terrifying. But yeah, it's great to hear that the papering actually worked out well for the company, and they had it. The crowd looked okay. It was still pretty dark in the building. They had a lot of the sections kind of not lit by design, and
but
so you really couldn't see a lot of the building.
You could see in the background though the press boxes, at least in the first level, behind like the seats that are on the baseball field, because the Tokyo Dome, if you don't know, is a giant 60,000 seat indoor baseball arena, a stadium. And so there's press boxes, luxury boxes, and you could see the silhouettes of people in those. So, I mean, there were years where those weren't even full. So, but we'll get into it. It's definitely noteworthy because it does not sound like there are 31,000 people in the building. For a lot of these matches, people are very quiet, and you can hear the emptiness even on bumps, and just when wrestlers yell. A cavernous building that's maybe half full feels even less full than that.
We'll get to that when we talk about Giant Bernard later. All right. So why don't you kick us off here with the opening match?
Yeah, so the opener is Ryuji Sai, who was from 01 Max at the time, trained there and wrestled there for a long time, taking on a New Japan young lion named Naofumi Yamamoto, who I would imagine most people listening to this show would know as Yoshitatsu, one of the first guys after Taka Michinoku, who we talked about on a previous edition of this podcast, one of the first Japanese wrestlers that the WWE plucked out of Japan. And this was him in his early stage, not that long before he came over to the United States, but just in the black trunks, black boots, and kick pads. These two guys had been feuding in sort of an interpromotional battle. That's one of the themes of this show. If you can call it a theme, it's kind of New Japan versus various other companies, but there wasn't a lot of build up to a lot of these matches, and there wasn't a lot of follow through or follow up afterwards. But yeah, that's the deal with this. The noteworthy thing as well is that you have a bunch of New Japan guys at ringside, and then you have like 8 or 10 01 guys at ringside. And that's something we'll see throughout the show, where not only the wrestlers in the ring going at it, but tensions being high between the two camps outside the ring.
There probably wasn't much follow-up because New Japan got its ass kicked for most of these matches.
Yes. Very weird booking. And I said, again, a transitional period for sure on a lot of levels.
Yeah, no, and so it was a quick start with these two. Lots of forearms and slaps to each other. Sai rolls out to the floor, and his corner guys, they're yelling at Yamamoto, and then they start pushing and shoving with young lions on the outside there, or is that just New Japan guys?
It's young lions and then a mix in of some veterans as well. That's one thing that was still happening back then that you don't see as much now, is that you would have the young lions and then sort of your veterans, but not your top guys. For example, Takashi, or as we referred to him on the last edition of this podcast, Takayuki Iizuka is here some 14 years after Wrestle War 92. He's just here on this show a lot outside of the ring, but not actually doing a whole lot.
Well, the New Japan guys on the outside of the ring were wearing sweet New Japan tracksuits. These were stunning.
Both of us have always wanted some variation of these New Japan tracksuits, but these are classic red and white. They're fantastic indeed.
So they put simultaneous knee bars on each other on the mats. After a rope break, Sai throws his mouth guard at the New Japan guys on the outside. Yamamoto and Sai now trade shots back and forth, kicks, slaps. Sai gets the advantage. We get a rear naked choke, like a sleeper with the legs wrapped around the guy's waist, and just a real smooth transition to an armbar then for the rope break. After an ankle lock from Yamamoto, Yamamoto with his other leg is able to kick Sai charging in.
And that's like
hard
the theme.
In the gut.
Yeah, for both of these guys, they are kickers. Very similar. Ryuji Sai, not in New Japan, not a young lion, so further along in his career, but they are both very, very hard kickers. And that is, like you talked about, the submissions, the other strikes, but it pretty much everything always goes back to the kicks. It's something that we'll see throughout this show. There's a lot of interesting, at least good matches, but there isn't necessarily the variation or the variety that you see in modern day New Japan.
No, not at all. And Yamamoto to the top, takes too long. Sai kicks him in the head. Yamamoto crumbles, falling into the ring. Sai hits a double foot stomp off the top, only a long 2 count. The finish actually comes with Sai hitting a belly-to-back suplex for the pin. Sai defeats Yamamoto in a match that was just an opener, 8 minutes, 18 seconds.
Yeah, I enjoyed this. I always enjoy the interpromotional stuff where there's some hate, you've got taunting going on, and I'm always a sucker for 2 guys that kick hard, just beating the hell out of each other. But yeah, the finish was a little bit weird, just a regular belly-to-back suplex, not a backdrop driver, not a German suplex, particularly coming after that huge top rope double stomp, which was awesome and was Sai's finisher at the time. So that was that. It started the show. We then go into Jushin Thunder Liger, Jado looking so jacked compared to how he looks in modern days, and Gedo, who is the current booker of New Japan Pro Wrestling, back then was just a very good, very underrated tag team wrestler, one of the best tag team wrestlers in the world. They are the CTU group in New Japan Pro Wrestling, a heel group, although it's, they're taking on outsiders here, so they're more baby faces. Jushin Liger, I know you're going to mention it. Some of the best gear you'll ever see.
I texted you because I was so excited about this gear. I'm like, why did I miss out on the years of Liger in this gear? We'll talk about it. But I know all the guys in this match, so I was very excited because my New Japan fandom was at this point, from like the late 90s, from the late 90s till this point, it was only like RF video compilations that and tapes that I would get a hold of.
Well, because that's the only place you could really you're up until pretty deep into the 2000s, your only options of seeing New Japan were when WCW was still around, when they would have guys show up, as we've talked about on previous podcasts, or just having to go through different extra legal means to get tapes or find message boards where people would upload matches or download torrents. So it was a completely different world than it is now.
No, and or you could roll the dice and try to get something off of LimeWire or one of those terrifying sites. So I knew these guys. I was pretty excited. My first, as soon as the G1 was available on pay-per-view, then I was all in, and that's when I started watching again. So at this point, it was kind of a blind spot for me. And I don't know who most of these guys are. So there'll be a lot of me questioning what's going on and who these guys are. Who are these guys on the outside? What's happening? We'll get to orange jumpsuits later. And so let's so back to this match. So we know Liger, Jado, and Gedo, and I had no idea they were a heel group because they were baby faces to me. I was so excited to see them come out. And they take on Masato Tanaka, who we have seen from previous ECW shows.
Yes. So it's Masato Tanaka teaming with Kentaro Kanemaru, who is Wing Kanemaru. And for longtime listeners of this podcast, that will sound familiar because at ECW Living Dangerously 1998, Masato Tanaka and then Wing Kanemaru were supposed to face each other, but that match fell through. And so here we get them in the same ring together. It's making good just for us, but they're on the same side, teaming with Bad Boy Hito, who just fits the Japanese indie sleaze sort of look 100% here. I'm thrilled with the fact that he's wearing a Too Tough Tony, very generic looking hockey jersey. Too Tough Tony was a American indie sort of deathmatch hardcore guy, so I'm just greatly amused that we're seeing a Too Tough Tony shirt in the ring in the Tokyo Dome for New Japan Pro Wrestling. So that's the deal here. Tanaka is sort of there again. It's outsiders, but it's all different companies. But we've got a deal here where it's Kanemaru and his Apache Pro company, and so that's the guys that we see outside of the ring. Again, we have New Japan tracksuit guys on the outside in the New Japan corner. And then We have orange jumpsuit, very, very indie guys like Gentaro, these random guys whose names very few people will recognize. They are on the outside with the Tanaka, Kanemaru, Bad Boy Hito group, and they're ready to cause problems.
The match starts immediately as Liger, Jado, and Gedo enter the ring. The fight is on. Liger's all-black outfit with gold trim is phenomenal,
including a black mask. He has an entrance robe. I can't remember whether he's wearing it here, but yes, I had a Liger action figure with this that I think I misplaced in a move, which greatly saddens me.
This should have been his gear all the time. I loved it. It was so cool.
It's fantastic. It is ominous. It's really cool. And as you said, this match gets going right away, and very, very early. Kanemaru gets Liger out on the floor. He has him on one of those terrifying Japanese tables and hits a huge splash from the floor through the table, and it just murders Liger. The way he goes through this table is terrifying. And then we get a camera shot.
He looked like he was killed. I was screaming. This was insane. Yeah.
It was as bad of a person getting put through a table spot, as violent of that as you'll ever see. And then apparently on the other side of the ring, as this was happening, Jado also got put through a table. We just saw the remnants of that. That then leaves Gedo and the aforementioned indie sleaze master himself, Bad Boy Hito, in the ring together.
Yeah, after some back and forth, Liger is back on the apron, so he was alive, thank God. I was so worried about him. Liger's standing on the apron at this point, and he's holding a chair.
Yes.
He's ready to fight.
Yes, this was the first match was a sporting pro wrestling heated match. This was a fight between two promotions or guys from different promotions. Things that were noteworthy here was how weird it was seeing Gedo work as a face, hitting a second rope Rana and a flying head scissors. I also noted as Bad Boy Hito then cut off this babyface fire from Gedo with a clothesline that this Too Tough Tony shirt that Hito was wearing is like the largest shirt you've ever seen on a small man. It is, as he's running, I'm expecting him to trip over the bottom of his own hockey jersey. And the other fashion report is that Kanemaru always had wacky gear. Here he's got like a cutoff t-shirt, and then he's wearing jorts that have flames painted on them. Awesome.
Kanemaru and Tanaka do like a wacky handshake, then a kiss, and then a double elbow drop. What was that?
It's the Paisan elbow. The only thing I could figure is that these two men, one who spent a lot of time in ECW, one who is very spiritually ECW, that being Kanemaru, they were paying tribute to the FBI. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That was the only thing I could think of. I don't know what was going on there. And so, Gedo takes a beating for the entire match. Basically.
He is bumping like a madman here. Gedo is, as I just said a few minutes ago, just super, super underrated as a pro wrestler. And I thought he was fantastic in this match.
Yeah, triple team on him, including Tanaka putting him across his shoulders, like fireman's carry position, then throws him off into a Uranagi.
Yeah, it was, if you could imagine something starting off like an F5 and ending like a rock bottom, that's probably pretty close to what this was. Then we get Tanaka slams Gedo and then mocks the Superfly call of Gedo, because Gedo, being a longtime fan of American wrestling, he has Superfly written on the back of his trunks, and he liked to do the Superfly splash off the top. So Tanaka mocks that, goes for his own Superfly splash, but Gedo gets the knees up, and then we get Jushin Liger in there with Masato Tanaka, and I just write down dream singles match that never happened.
No, and it was fantastic. Palm strikes all around. Liger with a power bomb on Tanaka, only the 2 count. Liger up to the top. He gets stopped by Kanemaru, who's holding Liger for Tanaka, who hits Liger with a superplex. Then we get Bad Boy comes in with a barbed wire baseball bat.
Yes, out of nowhere, which was awesome because we didn't even see that he had it. But yeah, he comes in. Jado is running wild at this point, which is an interesting sentence to say. He ducks the barbed wire bat shot from Hito. And then Jado, who is clearly a huge Chris Benoit fan at this point, hits rolling German suplexes, and then eventually also goes for a crippler crossface. Yeah. It's noteworthy as well that Jado and Gedo would go through these times where the only word I can use is cycling, and I'm not talking about like the Tour de France, in that they would both be ridiculously jacked for several months, and then their physiques would get softer for a few months, and then they'd get really, really jacked again. They were in the jacked cycle here for sure.
So an orange jumpsuit guy's on the apron, which allows Nakamura to grab a piece of the broken table.
Oh boy.
And he nails Jado with it, but he pops up at one.
He kills him with this piece of table.
And Tanaka cuts him off, hits a flip off the second turnbuckle into a stunner.
This was one of his main finishers. It was called the Diamond Dust, an awesome move, which is immortalized, as I always talk about the great N64 WWF No Mercy game. You could, if you created a wrestler, you could give him the Diamond Dust.
Nakamura immediately follows with a senton for the win. Post-match, the orange jumpsuit guys beat down Liger, Jado, and Gedo. I feel robbed. I wanted more Liger fun in this match.
Yeah.
10 minutes, 3 seconds.
Yes, there definitely could have been more to this, but again, this is a I won't say a long show, but it's a show with a lot of matches, so they have to work through stuff. So it was fun, but yes, I could have done with more Liger. I definitely could have done with more of Liger and Tanaka in there at the same time. So that then brings us to another interpromotional match, Tiger Mask 4 at this point, and Minoru Tanaka, who is, for my money, one of the most underrated wrestlers in the world. And the other thing that's noteworthy, if you're watching this show as we did, is that how he appears visually here in 2006 is exactly how he looks in mid-2020. He does not age, whether it be in terms of visually how he looks or in terms of how great and smooth of a wrestler he is. So they are taking on the team of Tatsuhito Takaiwa, a former New Japan junior heavyweight who has a reputation for just being very, very stiff. On the old PPH show, which is the predecessor to my Adam and Mike Big Audio Nightmare podcast, we christened him Bobby Brainkiller because of the damage that he would inflict on wrestlers. Not a guy you'd want to necessarily be in there with if you weren't ready. And a young Tomohiro Ishii of current New Japan fame here with hair. And he is not a member of the New Japan roster at this point. His entire career up to this point is basically just, he's a guy. And that's kind of where he is here. It's very strange to see him in this role. Other few notes, Minoru Tanaka, or as he's called here, just Minoru. He is a member of the CTU group with Liger, Jado, and Gedo. And if you notice at the start of this, we have a bit of tentativeness between Minoru and Tiger Mask. They're longtime rivals, but they shake hands before this match starts. And like I said, as I've noted, Minoru is just simply one of the smoothest wrestlers in the world. There's so many cool things he does throughout this match. I'm sure we'll get into it, but he's one of those guys that I could just watch him do wrestling all day.
Yeah, we had fine basic stuff early until Minoru sneaks a low blow. Ishii,
we had a weird thing where Ishii just runs and does a back bump, and clearly he thought there was something else that was going to be happening, but it was just, he still is good in this match, but it was one of those things that tells you, yeah, he's not what he's going to be several years from then.
Yeah, Ishii in there with Tiger Mask. He's got Tiger Mask in a submission, standing behind him, pulling his arms back, and Tiger Mask counters by jumping up into a mule kick to break the hold. Ishii's able to fight off a Tiger suplex attempt off the top, but Ishii misses a big elbow. Tiger Mask to the top. He looks to hit something, but Ishii runs over from his corner, holds the leg, keeping him. And Minoru at this point has seen enough. He comes over, pulls Ishii off the apron. Tiger Mask then does a high cross off the top, but he gets caught. He's thrown onto his shoulders, and then a Death Valley driver. That was an impressive show of strength right there.
Yes, that was one of the best spots of this entire match, I would say, or this entire show up to this point.
So he sets up Tiger Mask in like a pile driver position, but Minoru hits him with a drop kick to the back off the top rope. He hits Ishii with a drop kick, but Minoru's kick gets countered into a DVD. This was crazy.
Yes. Yeah, the Death Valley drivers are definitely a theme of this match. The craziest thing to me is, and I'd forgotten that he did this, that Takaiwa does this deal where he does multiple power bombs and then goes for a Death Valley driver as well.
Yeah, he tries to powerbomb Tiger Mask, but like Billy Kidman in the late 90s, that's not happening.
No.
Tiger Mask rolls him up for a good near fall. Tiger Mask tries to get onto his shoulders, like electric chair position.
This is bad.
But fails a couple of times until he just walks him to the corner and puts him on his shoulders. This was super awkward.
Yeah, and this was one of the first times where you actually hear the crowd laugh. You hear like 30,000 people sort of under their breath laugh and then groan. And it's also where I note that this is a completely different fan base than New Japan would have even maybe 7 or 8 years later. This is, for one, you look in the crowd, it's an older crowd. These are people who remember New Japan's glory days. And this is basically the percentage of the fan base that hasn't yet been completely run off by the mistakes of the last 7-8 years. And so, yeah, this is, it's bad. And it violates one of my cardinal rules of pro wrestling, which is if you screw up a spot and you can't make it happen,
keep going. Just
go past it. Don't keep doing it, because nothing makes wrestling look worse or more fake than this. But
I'm glad they got it because Tiger Mask is eventually on his shoulders, so that Ishii can come off the top rope and absolutely murder Tiger Mask with a Doomsday Device clothesline. Full flip from Tiger Mask on the way down.
Yes. Then we get Minoru making the save. Takaiwa hits a big lariat, goes for another lariat. Tiger Mask ducks, but then completely whiffs on an overhead kick, like a backflip Pele kick. And again, you hear laughter from the crowd. Then we get what I was hoping for, like this entire match to be, which is Minoru is tagged in, Ishii is tagged in. And immediately when Minoru gets in, he does this awesome thing that I've never seen any other wrestler do. He does this almost every match, where he goes for like a jumping spin kick, like a spinning back kick, and misses, but an all-in-one motion, like continues to rotate and lands on his feet. Like it looks something straight out of a martial arts movie. It's super cool. He follows that up by hitting a dropkick on Ishii and does a forward kip up. And it's at this point that I notice he is just the coolest man on the planet, or at least the coolest man in the Tokyo Dome here on January 4th, 2006.
It was great. And when we get Minoru ends up taking 2 power bombs, and he gets picked up. He's pressed over his head onto the shoulders of Ishii, who hits his brainbuster, but Tiger Mask makes a save. It's hard to explain how that happened. It was super cool.
It was amazing, and it should have been the finish to this match because it was just so visually cool. Basically, like you said, Takaiwa goes for 1 power bomb, holds on, picks him up, goes to power bomb him again, and then picks him up again, has him in the power bomb position where he's got him directly over his head, and then kind of leans back so Ishii can grab him and go into the brainbuster.
Yeah, it absolutely should have been the finish.
And it's one of those things that, again, as we talk about from week to week on this show, I'm shocked that we don't see this stolen and used in modern times.
Yeah. And then you get some miscommunication that lets Ishii, that Ishii gets hit with a lariat. Minoru, he knocks him down with a head kick. Here comes the Minoru kicks you were looking for.
Yes.
Minoru holds Ishii, who gets drop kicked by Tiger Mask from the top rope, into a dragon suplex. Tope by Tiger Mask to the floor. Minoru kicks Ishii in the head. He gets the victory, 12 minutes, 11 seconds.
He also hit right before the head kick. It's really cool sort of leg cradle backdrop driver suplex that, again, I'm surprised more people don't use. So this was fun. There was some clunkiness, particularly with Tiger Mask. It wasn't perfect, but it's kind of a fun little historical nugget to see Ishii back then with hair and kind of just see him as just a guy compared to what he is now. And like I said, Minoru Tanaka, to me, I can watch him any day of the week. Throw him in a 5-minute match with Ernie Ladd on every show that we do, and I'll be happy. Probably be a little weird, though.
And here comes a gigantic match. 12-man tag here.
Yes, a 12-man tag with the New Japan team of a young lion, Hiroki Goto, Hiroshi Nagao, who for my money is maybe the worst New Japan young lion of all time. He's tall, he's a former bodybuilder, and he has that thing where his upper body and his lower body don't know how to communicate with each other as he moves. Asamu Nishimura, who is basically a Japanese Dory Funk Jr., he was trained by Dory Funk and wrestles exactly like him. The aforementioned Takayuki Iizuka, not wearing pink, but also not a crazy bald man with a beard biting people and hitting people with the gloves. So
I still cannot believe the man from that show and the man that I know from modern day New Japan are the same human being. It's absolutely incredible.
Yes, it's wild. And here, yes, Takayuki Iizuka is teaming with Tatsumi Fujinami as part of this team, reuniting their team from last week's podcast 14 years earlier in Jacksonville, Florida. From last week's podcast, I should say. 14 years earlier in Jacksonville, Florida for War Games 1992. Wild how that ended up happening from the randomizer here that gave us this reunion. Teaming with an all-black trunks Toru Yano, who wasn't quite a young lion, but had gone back to his black trunks. He was definitely into the hijinks, not as much as he is now. And they teamed against a rogues gallery of independent stars. Daisuke Sekimoto, a short brick house of a man from Big Japan Pro Wrestling who is still tearing it up now. He's actually had a lot of very good matches over the last couple of years at WrestleMania weekends on indie shows. Kamikaze, who is just, he looked fine here, but back then I had not thought of this man in a decade. And I immediately realized how much I despised him as a wrestler. I just thought he was terrible. Kohei Sato, who is sort of the generational rival in 0-1 to Ryuji Sai, who we talked about earlier. Takashi Uwano, who is just a guy in orange trunks who wasn't bad, but really didn't amount to much. Yoshihiro Sasaki from 0-1, who is just, again, a brick house of a man, sort of in the current Tomohiro Ishii mold. Was a great wrestler, and now actually he retired several years ago, and I believe he is a school bus driver, which you would not believe from watching him here. And they are all teaming with the legend Riki Choshu.
And
so
like
the story
the
here,
Booker.
Yes, the Booker. And also a man who is still sort of he was walking in a lot of different worlds at this point, and the idea clearly behind this match was to again appeal to the old guard of New Japan fans, which is pretty much their entire fan base, and you were getting to see, albeit briefly, Tatsumi Fujinami and Riki Choshu one more time, resuming their long running rivalry and feud, which was one of the biggest feuds in New Japan history and one of the biggest money drawing feuds in the company's history.
Yeah, Fashion Corner. I did like that Tatsumi Fujinami's team all had the black trunks and the black boots. They all looked like, young lions. And they were all matching, which I love when a team matches, especially when there's 6 dudes matching. So I appreciated that. It did look like, because that's the Young Lions outfit that I'm used to seeing. It did look like, when they would do the shot of everyone in the corner, it did look like Fujinami was like the old man in school that never graduated and was hanging still trying to hang with the young kids. So
yeah, it's definitely a weird thing to look back through like 2020 eyes in New Japan, where really the only guys that wear the black boots and black trunks outside of like Minoru Suzuki, who even his gear has a little bit more flair to it, and he's Minoru Suzuki. only young lions wear that gear. Whereas here, again, like you said, Fujinami pretty much wore that his entire career. Nishimura, same thing. Didn't even wear knee pads, just black boots and black trunks. Iizuka was a veteran at this point, and he wore the same thing. So, yeah, to the less than 100% initiated, this would look like a group of 6 young and or old lions.
Yes. Match starts with everybody brawling immediately, and just seeing Yano in this is just weird. So Choshu beats up Yano, and the crowd is happy, and so am I.
Well, Fujinami right away goes to put the Scorpion Deathlock on Choshu, which gets a huge pop, a huge reaction, because that's Choshu's move, and how dare Fujinami try to do that with him. So yeah.
Yeah, and Choshu goes right to put on the Scorpion Deathlock, and it's even called that in the Japanese commentary. It's we
absolutely
heard Scorpion Deathlock.
And as he goes to put this on the young, uncoordinated Hiroshi Nagao, I note that Riki Choshu, nobody applies this move A, better, and B, more aggressively than Choshu. Like, with each motion, he grabs the legs, then he crosses the legs, and you feel like a man without super strong legs, their legs would just shatter at that point. Then he turns him over, and he just does it so aggressively and forcefully. It's hard to describe if you haven't seen it, but trust me, watch Riki Choshu applying the Scorpion Deathlock, even here, very late in his career, and it's incredible.
Team Fujinami dominating early. Yano's in. He yells something at Choshu, then puts on the Scorpion.
Yes.
And Choshu will have none of this. He runs in and clotheslines Yano's head off. I rewound this 3 times watching with glee. I think I even texted the video of it to you. I was so excited. This is my favorite part of the match by far. Loved every minute of that.
He murders him with the lariat. And you have to remember that Riki Choshu, at this point in his career, and largely even early in his career, but particularly here, there are 3 things that Riki Choshu does. He will kick you in the stomach with the toe of his boot. He will hit you with a crushing lariat, and he will put a Scorpion Deathlock on you. That is it. And he murdered Yano here with that lariat. It was fantastic. The other noteworthy thing here that I have in this match is just how awesome Daisuke Sekimoto is. And it's one of those deals where if the Japanese wrestling scene was not the way it is and was more, and you do see guys move from company to company, and we talk about that a little bit on this show, but it isn't as common as wrestlers going back and forth between WWF and WCW or going through the territories. It wasn't as common back then, particularly for native Japanese wrestlers who were trained by a particular company. Daisuke Sekimoto, trained by Big Japan, he's one of those guys that I'm sure New Japan would have desperately wanted to have and be, a top or near top guy, because again, he's not tall, but he is just the most massively built short man you've ever seen. And he's just so good at throwing human beings around, including one spot where he German suplexes his own tag team partner and his opponent at the same time.
2 guys at once are German suplexed. This was absolutely phenomenal. There's so many camera guys at ringside for this. There's so many
ringside photographers.
There's so many there that the poor cameraman filming this, one of the cameramen he's stuck in the unfortunate angle of having to shoot from under Riki Choshu's ass the entire time.
I knew when I saw that shot, I knew you were going to bring that up. I knew it.
Team
it was
Choshu,
certainly a unique angle.
Oh, I felt bad for that guy. He was trying to move. I was looking. He's trying to find a spot. Couldn't find a way to move. Team Choshu finally on the offense until Fujinami gets in, and then he slaps a Dragon Sleeper on. Choshu immediately runs in to break it up. All 12 guys back in the ring again. Choshu hits 2 lariats, the last one into a delayed German suplex. Sato pins Nagawa for the win, 12 minutes, 16 seconds. This was fun.
It was fun. It was a million miles an hour. Like, you have 12 guys, everybody's tagging in, tagging out. Everything's happening. Nothing other than the as you mentioned, Choshu killing Yano with that lariat. Nothing else really registers. The other note that I had is just young lion Hiroki Goto was awesome. He he actually was. It was rare in that he was in the title picture, in the junior title picture, as a young lion, teaming with Minoru as sort of a member of CTU. So while his career didn't end up panning out to be the top guy that I think some people may have hoped, he looked so good here as a young lion, and so that was enjoyable. But yeah, this really, the whole story of this match was people getting to see Fujinami and Choshu. That's why that was here. So we then move from one special attraction to another special attraction. It is Akebono teaming with Yutaka Yoshi, who I would imagine you were probably not expecting to see this large Japanese man in a bright pink singlet. Yoshi was he was a regular tag partner a couple years earlier of Hiroshi Tanahashi. But here he was just Akebono's tag partner, and they take on Super Strong Machine. And if you recall from our 1995 New Japan show review that we did, Hiro Saito, who was just sort of a journeyman tag team guy back then, he still is here. And it's noteworthy that he looked old in 1995. He looks not a day older here. He is just Hiro Saito.
He is. And now his partner, Black Strong Machine, right?
Yes. Yes. Super Strong Machine, but they called him Black Strong Machine.
Call him
here.
Black Strong Machine, and then New Japan World lists him as BS Machine, which made me laugh because that's what I call the randomizer sometimes. And so,
especially when it picks WCW pay-per-views from the year 2000.
Boy, does it. So yeah, we've got the Black Strong Machine and Hiro Saito against two big fat guys.
And the whole thing here is that Akebono, as a sumo grand champion, is a massive, massive star in not only combat sports and wrestling in Japan, but in pop culture. And so this is one of those things where still we're in the...
He's like it's like a celebrity match having him.
Yes, it's a celebrity match, and it's one of those deals where even though Antonio Inoki wasn't running things, you have his son-in-law, Simon, and Simon was constantly trying to find the big celebrity thing, the big outsider, the quick fix. We'll get into that later with Brock Lesnar, but that's the deal here with Akebono. And I mean, the thing I'll say is that the crowd reacts to Akebono, which to this point, we should mention almost nothing on this show is getting a reaction. Nothing. It is dead quiet. It could not be more different from modern New Japan Pro Wrestling, where the fans are 100% invested in every character, from the most lowly guy at the bottom of the card to, your big stars like Tanahashi or Okada or Tetsuya Naito. And you get loud crowd chants and, women crying and men crying and just all this stuff here. None of that is happening.
No. Akebono does sumo stuff early, slapping guys around, getting good crowd reactions, including
he does sumo slaps in the corner. And then one huge set of sumo slaps that knocks, I believe it was Machine. It was either Machine or Saito. Obviously, knocks one of them flying across the ring.
Akebono slams Machine and then slowly comes off the ropes. And I think Saito tripped him from the outside because down he went.
Yeah, well, this is one of those deals where, again, here the crowd laughs. Saito was supposed to trip him and didn't, and the camera work here is very kind and generous to that fact. But obviously, if you're in the building, you can see it. And so instead, Akebono just bounces off the ropes and just basically flare flops, and the crowd starts laughing. The other thing that's noteworthy with Akebono is that the man's facial expression never changes. He is, and granted, part of it is he's a large, tall man with very thin legs carrying a lot of weight. So I'm sure none of this is comfortable for him to do. And he tries hard, but just facial expression wise, he looks more bored than the crowd sounds.
That's a good point. So Saito and Machine go to work with sentons. Akebono gets to the corner, tags out. So Yoshi gets beat up for a while, tags Akebono back in. Machine tries to attack Akebono, but his strikes have no effect. Saito comes in to help with a double team, tries to suplex Akebono, but he reverses and suplexes both of those guys.
Which is nasty because I think it's Machine kind of half goes over, and it looks like at one point their heads could collide. Oof. And it could just be it could be Calamity Corner as much of this match was. I did want to also point out that Yutaka Yoshi, as I said, the large pink singlet clad man that is Akabono's partner, at one point we get him doing 3 Big Josh Northern exposures in a row here. So another callback to Wrestle War in 1992.
Akibono hits Machine with a hip toss and lands right on top of him, squashing the guy.
Yes, this was a huge hip toss takeover off the ropes that is kind of like a judo deal, almost like a slam, like legitimately judo, not like a judo chop like we'd hear Jim Ross say in the mid-'80s. But yeah, this looked uncomfortable to take.
Akibono's holding Machine. Yoshi comes in. Machine moves. He hits Akibono. But Yoshi's the one who gets hurt as he bounces off of Akibono.
Yes.
Saito and Machine are thrown into the same corner. We get an Akibono. He does his sumo stance. And then the place is actually buzzing at this point, which was noteworthy.
Yeah, I have that noted too. Biggest reaction for anything so far.
And then a full head of steam and an avalanche squashing both guys. Saito and Machine are able to do a double belly-to-back suplex on Akibono for his one bump in the match. Saito hits a senton and off the second turnbuckle onto Yoshi. Machine runs at Akibono and is caught in what I would call a modified Bossman slam.
Yes. Yes, I would say it was black hole slam-ish.
And Akibono choke slams Saito. Yoshi hits Saito with a splash off the top. Fat Guys for the win. 9 minutes, 18 seconds.
I also have one other note here. Right before the finish, there's a point where Akabono is clearly supposed to make the save for Yoshi, but he doesn't get there in time. And so Yoshi has to improvise and kick out. And again, you hear some laughter from the crowd as they recognize that Bono just wasn't able to get there, which again, why would you expect? Like, if you're putting this match together, something I wouldn't have on the sheet is Akabono run and make save before 3 counts.
Akibono run, just scratch that off of any sheet.
Exactly. So that then takes us to, for my money, it's the 3-match stretch of this show that makes this show worth watching. We have Yuji Nagata, Mr. New Japan at this point, one of the guys when I was talking earlier about several years earlier, New Japan stars getting thrown to the wolves unprepared in MMA fights and dying a death. Nagata was put in that position. It was terrible because the idea was that he was like the next dominant star, but then they put him as champion in spots like that and it was bad. They then spent the majority of the next several years trying to rehab him with matches like this, which worked to great effect as he is taking on Kazunari Murakami from Big Mouth Loud, which was a sort of a New Japan splinter group promotion run by a former New Japan official, Fumihiko Uai. Kind of the idea was that this was going to be similar to when Akira Maeda broke off and you had the UWF and you had shooters versus New Japan guys. But like everything that was happening in New Japan at this point, things were murky as to where the break actually was and were they going to work together. Here they were working together, and thank God they were, because this match was awesome. Kazunari Murakami, the best way I can describe him is a less talented wrestling version of Minoru Suzuki. He is nowhere near as slick on the mat. He can't really do a single wrestling move, but he has, bar none, the best facial expressions in the history of pro wrestling. His scowl, his look of anger, his eyes, his face. He is like something out of a movie. He's like something direct out of anime in terms of his facial expressions. And he throws nasty punches and kicks, and he's just a mean dude.
I was not familiar with Murakami. He looks mean. He looks like what you would draw if I said, draw me a Japanese mean guy villain, and you would draw this guy. And so he looks mean, but Nagata's ready. Nagata jumps him at the bell, beats him down, stomping him in the corner. Murakami fights back, hits Nagata with a jumping 2 knees to the face, then standing on Nagata's shoulders, choking with his boot.
Yes, this was one of his signature spots. If you call anything that Murakami did a spot, again, he was just a different style fight wrestler. He wore MMA gloves, by the way. And yes, he pounded him down the corner, and then he would do this thing where he'd get the guy down, and then he would just jump with full force onto the guy's neck and sort of stand on his neck, lean back, taunt the crowd, taunt the guy, whoever his opponent was here, he being Yuji Nagata. Just fantastic stuff, particularly with the great camera work that New Japan had, really showing the contortions of his face here.
Yeah, Murakami with lots of punches, repeatedly mounting and punching Nagata. They spill out to the floor where the mounted punches continue. The ref tries to break it up, but Murakami just throws the ref to the side. A young lion outside tries to intervene, and he's murdered with a punch by Murakami.
Yeah. We get an awesome spot where, again, it's simple, but Nagata's standing like back first to the apron on the floor, and Murakami just puts the boots to him with a couple middle kicks that, that would knock the breath out of any normal man, and then a big left hand punch that sends Nagata to the ground. We then get Nagata trying to get up to the apron. Murakami is back in the ring at this point, and Murakami just runs at him and knocks him off the apron with another big left hand. And we get a great camera shot of Murakami's scowl as Nagata is left on the floor, and the referee starts his count up to 20.
Back in the ring, more of the same, beating up Nagata. Nagata catches a kick attempt, pushes Murakami back into the corner, and follows it up with a jumping knee to the face. And
yes, this was one of the coolest things that Nagata did. Just like you said, countering out of getting beaten up himself to he's had enough. He grabs the guy and just literally grabs him sort of by the throat and just forces him several feet back into the corner. And that step up knee that, a lot of other guys have tried to do. CM Punk would do it. Nobody has done this like Nagata did.
Nagata locks in his armbar, and Nagata's screaming as he pulls back on the arm, and you can see his mouth is bloody from the earlier strikes.
Yes.
Murakami makes the ropes. Big time kicks by Nagata.
Kicks to the head while Murakami is trying to get it. Murakami's on all fours, and Nagata is just kicks him in the head several times. Hits a huge running kick to the chest. Not really like the penalty kick that we happens a lot of times. This was just a real hard running kick to the chest.
On the outside, we get vicious knees to the face by Nagata. We see Murakami's busted wide open as he rolls back in the ring.
Yes, busted wide open. We also have a point where Nagata shoves the legendary Yoshiaki Fujiwara, legend of New Japan, legend of those New Japan versus UWF and UWFI battles. At this point, Fujiwara is one of the principals of Big Mouth Loud. So that's another layer that the old school New Japan fan base that was in attendance here certainly got into. But yeah, there's no way to properly talk about how bad Murakami is bleeding here.
Oh, yeah.
Which the visual of those facial expressions with that blood
is great.
It's fantastic. He would have looked right at home as like the 11th man. If they needed someone to replace the Bobby Eaton shoulder injury situation, he could have been in War Games with this blood, and you wouldn't even notice the difference.
Yeah, Nagata repeatedly headbutting the cut. Brainbuster nails him, and then just a brutal kick to the head. Nagata is dominating here.
Well, we also have another great visual where, as you talked about all the the headbutts, Nagata is kneeing Murakami, and you then see Murakami's blood all over the thigh of Nagata.
Nagata with a belly-to-back suplex right on his head, holds on to it for the pin, gets the 3 count. Nagata wins. What a hard-hitting, brutal match. 13 minutes, 11 seconds.
Yes, this was tremendous. Like you said, hard-hitting, brutal, no BS. Is more of a fight than a pro wrestling match, which is good. This was, to me, of everything on the show to this point, this felt the most New Japan. This felt the most traditional New Japan because, yes, New Japan made major missteps when they tried to do actual MMA fights with their guys, or when they brought in terrible, former MMA fighters to do really bad pro wrestling. But New Japan was at its best when their wrestling matches felt as much like fights as they did catch as catch can pro wrestling. And this certainly was that. I cannot recommend this enough. It's a great way to spend 14 minutes.
Koji Kanemoto versus Shinjiro Otani.
This is another callback to that New Japan show that we reviewed from February of 1995, where they were on opposite ends of a tag team match. Here, Koji Kanemoto is still a New Japan regular mainstay in the junior heavyweight division. And Shinjiro Otani at this point is in 0-1 as the main guy in 0-1 after the untimely passing of Shinya Hashimoto several months earlier in the summer of 2005. Otani is the main guy, the top guy in 0-1 at this point.
Yeah, like you mentioned, after the match we watched from the 95 show, I wanted to see this match 10 years ago. So we've got it here now. We've got Otani has a sword, like a samurai sword.
Yes, the Fire Festival sword from their big tournament that they do every year, basically their version of the G1.
Kanemoto wastes no time going to work on the knee of Otani. Otani nails him with a full Nelson release suplex where Kanemoto flipped all the way over, landing front first on the mat.
Yeah, it was exactly. It was a dragon suplex, but instead of it being the normal one where you drop him, drop the guy on your head, or you hold on the bridge. Yeah, this is as much a throw as it is a suplex from the dragon or from the full Nelson position.
Otani has Kanemoto in the corner, boot across his face multiple times, and the crowd is into it. We've got the crowd into it now. This
is one of Otani's signature spots. And again, Otani, big New Japan star that left. He's back here, and again, long-time feud, long-time rivals, long-time compatriots. A lot of history between these two, and with you talked about the face wash, the boot scrape. This at this point was a signature move of both men. So I'm sure as the fans were watching Otani do this, they knew what was coming next, which is going to be at some point Kanemoto returning the favor and giving him a receipt.
Kanemoto fires up and is immediately cut off with a belly-to-back suplex. Kanemoto with a heel hook, Otani with the ropes. Top rope moonsault by Kanemoto, long 2 count, including an out-of-position red shoes diving over the pin attempt to do the count. One of my favorite things.
Classic red shoes. It's on some of the WCW shows we've reviewed. That's also a Randy Anderson special as a referee. Noteworthy as well, you talk about Kanemoto doing the moonsault. Him doing the moonsault so often in his career, as was the case for, we talked about Keiji Muto, the great Muta, and how much that wrecked his knees. The same thing was the case for Kanemoto. He was still pretty mobile, but I mean, you can see the taping on his knees. His knees were fairly mummified already.
Kanemoto with the boot across the face to Otani this time, and the crowd was waiting for it, and they loved every minute of it. Otani, from the apron, leaps to the top rope, hits a top rope drop kick, and at this point in the match, I did not know he was capable of that, of jumping to the top rope and delivering that.
Absolutely, yeah. And here, I mean, he's definitely bigger. He's a heavyweight as compared to him being a more slight junior heavyweight back in '95. But one of the signature spots, I was waiting for the springboard top rope drop kick to the back of the head, which was just straight murder. I remember him doing that, I believe, in 1995 at Starrcade to Eddie Guerrero. But yeah, here it's just to the face, but still fantastic.
Otani spins him around 3 times before hitting, was that a Michinoku driver? What was that?
Well, there was are you talking about the huge power bomb, the spinning power bomb, the doctor bomb? Yeah, this was awesome. This was a variation of the old Dr. Death Steve Williams spinning power bomb, except it was from a regular power bomb position, not the gut wrench that Dr. Death would do.
Kanemoto hits a tiger suplex for a long 2 count. Otani punches him in the face, hits a dragon suplex with a bridge, gets the pin, 10 minutes, 47 seconds.
Yeah, this was very good. It was a little rushed. Some of the stuff that was on this show maybe didn't need to have to happen. I could have I could have worked with another 5 minutes of this, but for the amount of time they had, this was really good.
And now we get one of my favorite moments on this show.
A ring entrance.
Oh, yes, a full entrance for Hiroshi Tanahashi. And this is the first time, because of the way New Japan World has the show on there, it's you don't get any of the entrances, and as soon as the match is over, it's over.
Yeah, because basically the music that was used for almost all these guys, literally every guy in this show except for Hiroshi Tanahashi, they don't have the rights to. So instead of doing, what they do now and what, you see on the WWE network where you have the dubbed over music, different music, they don't have that here. So it was nice to actually get Tanahashi's entrance, get to see the long rampway, the entranceway for the Tokyo Dome, and get a feel for.
Yeah, you can see how massive and impressive the stage setup and ramp is. This is the first time we've seen it.
Yes.
And Tanahashi's opponent, of course, is our guy Shibata, Adam. We love ourselves some Shibata.
Yes, Katsuyori Shibata. So I'll be open and honest here. For one, that this match is great, but even if it wasn't, I should just say this. There's no way a match with Tanahashi against Shibata isn't going to be great, but these are probably my two favorite wrestlers of all time. And so when we pulled up this show and I saw that these guys were matched up against each other and remembered that, I was very excited for this show because it's, without going on too much of a tangent, I'm a firm believer that when you have two guys that are both very good but wrestle very different styles, that is far more interesting and more often produces a great match than when you have two very similar wrestlers. A lot of people talk about, a dream match, and then they'll come up with, two guys that are very, very similar. And no, this styles make fights, as they say in boxing and MMA. And here styles make a match. Shibata is such a badass, such a throwback to as we talked about in the Murakami Nagata match, a throwback to the earlier days of New Japan where guys were, they came off as fighters. They came off as dangerous. And Shibata at this point had left New Japan the year prior, had joined Big Mouth Loud, was going to be going on a sojourn into MMA in the coming years. And not only is he here, he's representing Big Mouth Loud, and that the man that I mentioned, Fumihiko Owai, that is the extra guy that's on commentary here providing analysis as they show him several times during this match.
Shibata comes out on fire, kicking, beating down Tanahashi, putting the boots to Tanahashi on the ground.
Including immediately a huge head kick. Like we talked about the Nagata Murakami deal, this was at least as violent of that.
Yeah, and he tries to kick him out of the ring in the most violent fashion until Tanahashi finally rolls out to the floor.
Yeah.
Tanahashi, back in the ring, he just gets more kicks by Shibata until he is able to catch a kick, and Tanahashi hits his patented dragon screw and a quick drop kick. Both guys square off in the middle of the ring.
Yeah, Shibata's telling him to hit me at this point.
Trade hard forearms back and forth. Shibata, he gets the upper hand and hits one of the hardest slaps to the face of Tanahashi. I audibly yelled on my couch.
I know exactly what you're talking about because I did the same. And this was what I loved about this match, and particularly the early part of this match, is that Shibata he's doing everything he can to bait Tanahashi into his style of match. Hiroshi Tanahashi, particularly at this point, but just, always, he's a great pro wrestler. Here, he still is in his phase where he's heavily influenced by Tatsumi Fujinami. He uses the Dragon Suplex as a finisher. He also uses the Dragon Sleeper, but he is your wrestler. He's going to do moves and holds, whereas Shibata is a fighter. It's forearms, it's kicks, it's slaps. And Shibata's goal from the beginning of the match is to drag Tanahashi into his world. And Tanahashi, being stubborn and being proud, is more than happy to oblige, but just gets the hell beaten out of him for doing so.
Fighting, struggling, even hair pulling back and forth. Tanahashi's down in the corner, and Shibata hits his running drop kick. Tanahashi tries to springboard off the middle rope, but Shibata kicks him in the ribs.
Yes, a huge knee to the stomach. Tanahashi is his second rope cross body, where his back is to you. He tries to jump back and just eats a huge knee that we got a replay of. We didn't get too many replays on this show, but that was worthy of it. We then get a running kick from Shibata with Tanahashi on the apron. That puts Tanahashi out to the floor.
And I just want to say, Tanahashi selling this beating, selling the choke and a chin lock, so great. He's
channeling Ricky Steamboat here, which is again a very apt comparison as well. There's a lot of that in how he's taking and how he's reacting to this punishment.
Shibata with a dragon sleeper tries to follow up with a kick to the seated Tanahashi, but he catches the leg, spins him around, and drops Shibata with a release German suplex.
And the dragon sleeper here you mentioned by Shibata, this is another sort of poke and prod and taunt and mocking from Shibata here, understated, but this is Tanahashi's move. This is also the move of New Japan legend Tatsumi Fujinami, and Shibata is no longer a New Japan guy.
Brutal slapfest back and forth. Tanahashi goes for an enziguri, but Shibata didn't sell it at all, so they went right back to it, and this time he went down. So I know this is going to drive you nuts.
No, see, I love this because what happened here is that Tana went for the enziguri, but it didn't work. And so Shibata immediately is like, well, I'm not going to sell this. I'm just going to kick you.
Yep.
And for whatever reason, to me, the way that they did it and the way Shibata or the way Tanahashi went back and got it, it didn't bother me at all. Like, to me, it felt like what would happen in a fight, rather if you apply pro wrestling rules to a fight as opposed to just repeating a spot.
Tanahashi hits a German suplex with a bridge for a near fall. Dragon sleeper by Tanahashi. This gets reversed into a guillotine by Shibata. Another kick, but Tanahashi kicks out. A roll-up attempt by Tanahashi. Shibata holds the top rope, turns around, and kicks Tanahashi in the face. Knockout shot, but only a 2 count.
Yeah, Tanahashi was sort of kneeling at this point and just gets his head knocked off of his shoulders. We also had a great spot right before that where Shibata hits a running big boot, a running jumping kick, but Tanahashi immediately kind of fights through it and hits a sling blade, which he had just started using at this point.
So after the 2 count, Shibata picks him up and unloads with tons of kicks and knees, but Tanahashi refuses to go down.
He's absorbing them, and he's very visually, like, he's in pain, but he's fighting through it, and he's almost daring more kicks.
And finally, he collapses after just taking quite a beating here. Tanahashi on his hands and knees. Shibata casually walks over and kicks him again in the face.
Yes.
The ref starts counting Tanahashi down, like giving him the 10 count.
And at this point, the crowd is starting to stir. And I note that this is the only match not involving legends that the crowd starts to get really invested in. And one, it's because Shibata is incredible, and Shibata's style harkens back to the earlier days that these people are familiar with. And we're seeing all the qualities in Tanahashi that in very short time, really only a couple months from here, he'll win his first IWGP heavyweight title. We're starting to see the things that will make Tanahashi the ace of New Japan and the guy that will put the company on his back and carry it to relevance and reemergence as a major company.
We were getting a replay, so I'm not sure how the ref went down, but Tanahashi was up barely. And Shibata breaks him down to his knees with more kicks. Then a huge kick to the side of the head. Tanahashi again crumbles. Shibata covers him for the 3 count. And wow, what an ass kicking by Shibata. I was not expecting that. 11 minutes, 59 seconds. I was absolutely surprised by this finish and this outcome.
Yeah, I had honestly forgotten about this finish. I remember the match, but and as the match went along, it was starting to stir memories of how this ended. But going into it, my expectation, not having watched the show in a long time, was that Tanahashi was going to win. And no, this was...
Me too, yeah.
I mean, Tanahashi fought back valiantly, but this was a showcase for Shibata just being An absolutely deadly pro wrestler, a deadly striker. I loved this match. Like I said, these three matches were everything that's great and everything that could be great and would be great again about New Japan Pro Wrestling.
So we get Nakanishi versus Giant Bernard, and this is Bernard's debut after jumping ship from All Japan.
Yes, Giant Bernard had left the WWE. When we last left Giant Bernard at WrestleMania 19, he was the A Train, and he was not long for WWE at that point. He joined All Japan and had a successful run there as sort of a big monster heel. And New Japan then brought him in here, and the idea was that he was going to be, if things panned out, their top, regularly appearing foreign monster. I think they really had designs on him being sort of in that Vader, Scott Norton, or Bam Bam Bigelow role as the big, scary foreign heel, taking on, as you talked about, Manabu Nakanishi, who we've mentioned before was Kurosawa in WCW. The years before, about 10 years prior. These are two big guys.
I forgot how big Nakanishi is until I saw him in there with Bernard, who is just a huge dude. So
he's just a massive guy. Big head, big legs, big torso, small trunks, which I had forgotten about with Bernard. But otherwise, Bernard is definitely bigger than Nakanishi, but Nakanishi does not look small in there with him.
Bernard with the early advantage, tons of headbutts in the corner on Nakanishi. He shoves the ref out of the way as he tries to break him up in the corner, and I think I've seen a guy throw the referee down for this very reason in every match at this point. It was so overdone.
Yeah, it was weird because it's not like a modern New Japan where literally the only complaint you can have about it is too much interference, too many ref bumps. Here, refs get thrown down all night, but it never leads really to interference. It's just to show how out of control the match is getting. But when you do it every match, loses its impact.
Nakanishi tries to clothesline him over the top rope, can't do it, tries again, gets him over to the floor on the second try.
It's even more awkward than you mentioned because Nakanishi bounces off the ropes. He's expecting Bernard to be on the ropes immediately opposite him, but instead Bernard he's up against the ropes perpendicular. So Nakanishi just kind of takes a turn and goes and clotheslines him, but Bernard's not going over the top rope. You start to hear the crowd laugh here, and then Nakanishi hits a running clothesline and takes him over, but then Bernard immediately pulls him out, but then Nakanishi immediately posts him. So a lot happening there.
Bernard in the ring sends Nakanishi to the corner, charges in after him, but Nakanishi bounces out of the corner and hits Bernard with a huge spear. Bernard's chest is bright red from the chops of Nakanishi.
Well, I would also imagine from the fresh shave, because that's the one thing that's noteworthy as well.
Or it's potentially from the body waxing earlier. There's not a single hair on Bernard, and he was definitely known in his Albert A-Train hip-hop hippo days as being a super hairy dude.
Yes, he was pretty much a 10 on the Jimmy Valiant, George the Animal Steel scale when it comes to hair. Here, no hair. He's got tattoos all over his body, but the chops certainly leave a mark.
Nakanishi picks up Bernard into a torture rack backbreaker position, like across his shoulders. That was super impressive. Bernard chokes his way free. Lots of chops. Goes for the tree slam, also known as the Baldo bomb last time we saw him.
Which, it was known as the derailer the last time we saw him. Oh, the derailer,
that's it, yeah.
Here, because we have New Japan announcers, and they either are more of a fan of the hip-hop hippo era, or they're just like hipsters, and they're going to go old school. They call it the Baldo bomb. We hear them say that over and over again, but then they also call it the neck tree hanging slam.
But only a 2 count there. Bernard goes for a Vader bomb out of the corner.
Oh, God, this is so bad.
And Nakanishi's supposed to roll out of the way, but he doesn't roll far enough, and Bernard just crushes him.
Yeah, so he rolled. Well, what happened here, and what happens a lot in this move, is when you roll in toward the corner. Because the guy coming off doing the Vader bomb, he's coming out so far that even his legs are probably going to catch you. So you roll in here, Nakanishi rolls away, and like you said, just gets crushed even worse than if he hadn't rolled. He basically gets crushed by all legs here, and we get the crowd laughing again.
But I did like, it was a good recovery because he was supposed to miss, so Bernard immediately starts selling like he accidentally got hit low, which I thought was pretty smart.
Yes.
Nakanishi hits a huge German suplex with a bridge for a near fall. Place actually bought that as a finish. It got a big reaction. Bernard with a bicycle kick goes for a power bomb, but almost loses Nakanishi in the most terrifying manner possible.
Yes. So these are two huge men up against the ropes. Like at this point, I'm worried they're both going to go fall back and both go tumbling over. Bernard, being a pro, says, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm also not going to drop you on your head. Instead, he just sort of gently drops, and we get more laughter from the crowd. He then hits a short arm clothesline, immediately goes up for a pretty sloppy Vader bomb that kind of awkwardly crushes him all legs again here.
Yeah, but this time he lands right on Nakanishi's face.
Yes, legs to face.
And he gets the win here, 9 minutes, 53 seconds.
Yeah, this was not very good. This was their attempt to make Bernard basically the new Vader, have this big showcase at the Dome, and it failed. Bernard would go on to have a good career in New Japan, mostly as a tag guy as time went on, but he didn't get to that level that I think they were hoping, and it was probably a bit naive to think he could get to that level.
IWGP Tag Team Championship match. Your champions are Masahiro Chono and Tenzan, who we've also saw in the 1995 show. And they are taking on Omari and who are these guys, Adam? And where are they from, too? Because I didn't know either of these guys.
So it's Takawa Omori, who started out in All Japan, and he was one of the guys that was supposed to be the next wave, kind of a half generation after Kawada, Misawa, Kobashi, Taue, the four pillars, the guys that are just, carried All Japan in the 90s. He never quite got to that level. And then he ended up in 0-1 Max by this point. And his partner is longtime former New Japan wrestler Shiro Koshinaka. If you're a fan of Ryusuke Taguchi, the funky weapon in New Japan, and you like the hip attacks, you like the flying butt attacks, Shiro Koshinaka is the godfather of that. Fun note, all four of these men have appeared on pay-per-view in the United States. Chono, obviously, many times, including at the NWO sold-out pay-per-view, many times in WCW. Hiroshi Tenzan wrestled Randy Savage at Starrcade 95. Shiro Koshinaka was on the first WCW New Japan Super Show, teaming with a six-man tag, and one of his partners was an even younger Iizuka than we saw in 1992. And who was on the other side of that six-man tag, just for a bit more symmetry from last week's Wrestle War 92 show? Two of the men on the other team, the Z-Man and Brian Pillman. And then we have Takawa Omori, who appeared, I believe, was in the 1991 Royal Rumble.
Wow.
Look it up. It was one of the most random things ever that he was in the Royal Rumble.
So this match was not great.
I enjoyed this match.
Okay. So
I'll tell you why I enjoyed this match, because this was the first match on this show where you had significant crowd emotional investment in all four men. Chono and Tenzan, kind of the modern legends of New Japan. Chono's in-ring career is starting to come to a close. Tenzan is like one of the top guys in New Japan. Koshinaka, this older fan base absolutely loves seeing Koshinaka do Koshinaka things. And then Takawa Omori is an outsider, and he looked great here, I thought.
There was most of the match early is a beatdown of Tenzan, and one of my favorite spots here is Omari has him in a camel clutch, and Tenzan bites the thumb to break the hold.
Yes.
He breaks the hold, but Tenzan's still biting his thumb, which I really liked. Tenzan, after a long time, finally tags in Chono. Chono starts beating down both of his opponents. He hits a top rope shoulder block on Omari, STF by Chono, and I believe this is the move that we learned from our Clash of the Champions episode that he actually taught to Eric Watts.
Yes, exactly. One of the most devastating long-running finishing submission holds by this point in 2006. But yeah, he was the man who taught Eric Watts the STF, although considering how Watts applied it, I don't know if I would take ownership of that teaching.
I'm making fun. I'm poking fun here.
Yes, I know.
Koshinaka makes the save.
Koshinaka, by the way, has great old man energy.
He does.
He's balding. He makes these great, like, it's not as overtly like crazy, scary, cartoonish as Omori, but he makes these great understated facial expressions. He wears just long, baggy white pants, and again, everything he does is hip attack based. Everything.
It is, but it's like serious hip attack. It's not like it's a real strike for him.
Yes, so. And then I love when he does it too. He does, like, there's one point where he would do this almost every match. There's one point in this match where he'll do a hip attack and then he'll like pump his fist. They'll do another hip attack and pump his fist, and he'll keep doing this over and over. And the crowd, he was one of the most over guys on this entire show.
Absolutely. Tenzan back in. He goes to the top, puts his knee in the back of Koshinaka, jumps off the top, driving him into the mat.
I love this move. I had completely forgotten that Tenzan used this move because he hasn't in recent years as age and injuries have slowed him down. This was also, believe it or not, this same move back in the early 90s was Ricky Morton's finisher when he was Richard Morton as a heel, who we talked about on last week's show. He didn't get a chance to use it in that match against Big Josh, but I immediately thought back to that. I was like, man, the symmetry between these shows is kind of scaring me.
Tenzan hits Koshinaka with a brainbuster off the middle rope, but Koshinaka pops up.
Yes.
Omari knocks Chono off the apron. Koshinaka hits Tenzan with a German suplex, another clothesline by Omari.
Yes, the Axe Bomber. The
announcers were screaming Axe Bomber, Axe Bomber.
Well, yes, because the history of the Axe Bomber goes back to Hulk Hogan, and that being his finisher in New Japan before he came to WWF. And so Omori had adopted that many years prior. And so, yes, that was a big moment in this match.
Koshinaka with his hip attack off the top rope, almost a 3, a really long 2 count for a great near fall.
And a huge reaction, one of the biggest crowd reactions of the entire show at this point.
Chono tries to come in, but gets cut off right away by and Koshinaka nails Chono with a huge power bomb.
Yes, yeah, we get Omori with an Axe Bomber on Chono, like as he's just getting through the ropes, and then, like you said, a big stalling power bomb from Koshinaka on Chono, which I wasn't expecting that power bomb from Koshinaka, and then B, I was not expecting late stage Matsuro Chono with the neck that he had taking this power bomb here.
Omori hits his move on Tenzan. He gets Tenzan in a position like he's going to hit like an Alabama slam, but instead just drops down.
Yeah, drops to his knees and drops him head first. The Axe Guillotine Drop, it was called. It is a scary looking move.
Yeah, it is. Tenzan kicks out again. Omori to the top, pulls down the knee pad, nails Tenzan with a knee drop off the top. Still Tenzan kicks out. Tenzan finally tags out. Both men tag out. Chono hits a big kick on...
This Mafia kick, the Yakuza kick. Dusty Rhodes would get so excited to call it the Mafia kick. I was hearing that in my head here every time he used that move. He also did... So he did the regular, the like step Mafia kick. Then later in his career, he started doing... It was the Shining Mafia kick. It was like a Shining Wizard, but it was a kick with the point of the boot instead of kind of the flying knee kick.
Chono holds his legs, Tenzan to the top, nails a diving headbutt. It breaks down into a 4-way. Chono hits Koshinaka with another kick to the head, but a kick out at 1. Chono misses a kick, gets rolled up for the longest 2 count ever. How is that not 3?
I was losing it here. That was a great near fall.
Huge crowd reaction too.
Yes. And then at this point, Koshinaka gets back up, goes for what ostensibly is going to be another running hip attack, and Chono catches him coming in with another Shining Mafia kick and gets the win. The first half of this match was slow,
Yes.
but I loved the second half of this match. I thought it was fun. Everybody was working hard. Koshinaka brought this crowd to life. Chono felt like a star. Tenzan was Tenzan. So
Chono
not a
Tenzan,
5-star match, but I enjoyed it.
Chono and Tenzan still the tag team champions. Yeah, 19 minutes 28 seconds. I think you're right. This talking about it now. The second half. I think it was the first half of this match that was just too much.
When you think about the pacing of this show too, we had those 3 great matches.
Yes.
Then we had that bad Bernard Nakanishi match, and then you're staring down 20 minutes of this. 15 minutes, this would have been a great match instead of just a good match.
Absolutely. The back half of that was fantastic.
So this, if you're watching along on New Japan World, if you're watching the individual matches on New Japan World, you would be thinking, well, this is the main event of the show. Not true. New Japan, for whatever reason, does not have the rights to show Brock Lesnar matches on New Japan World. So the main event, which is Brock Lesnar defending the IWGP Heavyweight title versus Shinsuke Nakamura, is not on New Japan World. However, it is up in multiple places on YouTube and on Daily Motion. If you go to our Twitter account, we shared the link to the match on YouTube. We will also share that again, as this show is posted. Obviously, as you're listening to this, it's already been posted. But if you go to our Twitter account and you want to watch this match, you can watch it on YouTube.
IWGP Championship, Brock Lesnar defending the title against Shinsuke Nakamura.
Yes, and Shinsuke Nakamura here, he's not the Nakamura that you'll remember from years later, the guy that was maybe the most charismatic wrestler in all of professional wrestling. Had a huge run in New Japan, in the early to mid 2010s, and then came into great fanfare to WWE as largely the same character. Here he's much more of a straightforward fighter, straightforward wrestler. I love his gear at this point in his career. I think it's the best look he's had. It's these long black leather pants with the silver trim, and the trim is just variations of or different sizes of the New Japan Lion Mark logo. So he looks great and he looks like a complete badass, but he's not the weird charisma isn't there with him at this point. Meanwhile, Brock Lesnar is wearing red trunks, red boots, red knee pads, which is definitely a different look if you're used to seeing Brock Lesnar in all black. And even though we very rarely see him, or we don't really see him much here, Brad Rangans, our buddy Brad Rangans, is the second/manager for Brock Lesnar during his New Japan run.
You'll remember him from the AWA Super Sunday podcast if you go back and listen to that show.
But you might not have recognized when we said Brad Rangans, because you may recognize him as Bradley Reingans. I do also just have to quickly mention a little backstory here to this match. Brock Lesnar, as we said, this was sort of in a lot of ways, like New Japan's final Hail Mary of this era to try to bring in an outsider to spark things. They're paying him a ton of money to come in and do these shows. He had defeated at the previous Tokyo Dome show just a couple months earlier in October. He won a 3-way match over Masahiro Chono and the then IWGP champion Kazuyuki Fujita, who is a legitimate MMA fighter, a star in Pride and K1, but he did not ever want to put anyone over. So they put Chono in a 3-way match. It was first pinfall, so Chono gets pinned. That's how they moved the title from Fujita to Lesnar, and that's what brought us to this point.
The WWE on December 27th, now remember this show is January 4th, December 27th, they withdrew their attempt to prevent Lesnar from appearing at this Dome show. WWE was threatening to enforce their non-compete clause from Lesnar's previous contract with WWE. But they must have realized that they had pretty much no case. So it was scheduled to go to court on January 3rd. So, of course, there was a slim chance that they could get a judge to grant them a temporary restraining order for what would be later that day in Japan for this match. So they withdrew that claim, trying to stop him from participating.
Yes, and if I remember correctly, that whole thing goes back to when Brock Lesnar was under contract and quit to try to go play football. And then so they what the end result of it was that they could enforce his non-compete clause for wrestling in the United States, but it had no jurisdiction over if he wanted to go and wrestle in Japan. So that's how he ended up here and how this match still ended up being able to happen.
Lesnar comes out quick. Nakamura tries a kick. Lesnar catches his leg, shoves him down. Nakamura catches Lesnar with kicks, still no effect. Enziguri by Nakamura stuns Lesnar slightly. Lesnar catches his next kick attempt and hits clubbing forearm to the head.
Yeah, it's basically like a clothesline, but it's to the face. It's hard to describe. He murders him with it. And we have to say right off the bat, like, this is super intensity from both guys at the beginning, particularly Lesnar. This is a short match, and Lesnar is he's a coiled animal that springs to life at points in this match. He is terrifying here.
Yeah, Lesnar, this is the intensity that, you saw from, a lot of Lesnar matches here, and he's just going full speed ahead. This is fantastic. And Nakamura is hanging. He's hanging with him. and
Which isn't easy because Brock Lesnar did not care when he went there, when he went to New Japan. Brock Lesnar, he was not that he was necessarily overly concerned about not dropping guys on their head or hitting them hard in WWE, but here he was even less concerned about doing that. And that is terrifying when you're looking at Brock Lesnar.
Lesnar throws him with an exploder suplex, like you mentioned. Nakamura tries a crucifix attempt, and Lesnar leaps in the air and falls back, slamming Nakamura to the ground.
Yeah, Nakamura is going for his sort of flying armbar that he goes for. He kind of jumps and spins into it and then grabs a cross arm breaker, but he's only able to get in the crucifix position. Yeah, Lesnar, he has him in this position and gets like all the way up on his tippy toes and then just falls back like a tree being chopped down in the forest.
On the outside, Lesnar rams Nakamura back first into the ring apron. Nakamura catches Lesnar trying to come back into the ring. Nakamura teases a dive, waits for Lesnar to turn around, then hits a tope to the floor. Still on the outside.
It hurts both men, and it really ends up hurting him more than Lesnar. Like, Lesnar just basically decides he's not going to sell this and then hits a huge knee lift that
oof.
You can't even describe it like a normal knee lift. Like, it's like something out of Street Fighter 2.
And follows it up by ramming Nakamura back first into the ring post. Back in the ring, Lesnar misses an elbow drop. Nakamura grabs him in a sleeper hold. Lesnar breaks the hold by ramming him back first into the corner. Nakamura catches Lesnar in the corner with an armbar, and he's got the armbar on in the ropes. Nakamura follows up with a drop kick off the top rope, German suplex, and the place is going crazy for Nakamura at this point.
Yes, absolutely. This is really probably the biggest reaction of anything on the show is Nakamura looking like he might actually have a chance to beat Brock Lesnar, because even though it didn't lead to big ticket sales, obviously, as this only did 10,000 paid, the people that were in the building, they viewed Brock Lesnar as legit and terrifying and a threat to be overcome.
They were all correct. Correct on all counts. Absolutely. Armbar by Nakamura. Lesnar powers his way out with a huge power bomb.
It's one of those deals where the guy had, you see it a lot in wrestling, initially in MMA. I believe a great spot, if you can call it that, in a real fight between Quentin Rampage Jackson and Ricardo Arona.
That's right.
In Pride. This exact thing where he has him in an armbar, transitions to the triangle, and while Nakamura is still having that hold on, Lesnar powers up with one arm and just almost drives him through the mat with a power bomb, as you said.
Lesnar hits an F5 called the Verdict in New Japan.
Yes, hearkening back to just the legal situation that you just mentioned.
And Lesnar gets the win. Still IWGP champion, 8 minutes, 58 seconds. Just the little flash for Nakamura. Otherwise, quite a squash.
Yeah, this was Brock Lesnar in New Japan was very frustrating because on paper, it should have been amazing because it's Brock Lesnar in New Japan. even Brock Lesnar in 2006 and New Japan in 2006. You look at the potential opponents, but Lesnar was there. And again, I mean, that's what the business is. It's to make money, but Lesnar was there to make money, get in, get out, not take a lot, not be in a situation where he ever really looks bad other than in very fleeting moments in matches. And all his matches were super short. So it didn't live up to, I think, what a lot of people hoped. I mean, I can think back to when, this happened and I was doing various podcasts before they were called podcasts, and everyone was very frustrated. A couple months later, it was going to be Brock Lesnar defending the IWGP Heavyweight Championship against Hiroshi Tanahashi. The plan was for Tanahashi to win and, that be his crowning achievement. He defeats the unbeatable Brock Lesnar and he finally breaks through, wins the IWGP title and becomes, the one of, if not the top guy in the company. That match doesn't happen. Brock Lesnar does not appear. And instead we get Hiroshi Tanahashi defeating Giant Bernard in a decision match, if you will, to decide the vacant IWGP Heavyweight title, and that would be the last we'd ever see of Brock Lesnar in New Japan. We would get one more Brock Lesnar appearance in Japan, a non-WWE appearance where there was a deal where they had a previous IWGP title belt was being defended as a championship in what at that point was Antonio Inoki's new weird company called the Inoki Genome Federation, which was pro wrestling matches, shoots, a lot of work shoots, and Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle had a match in that company for the non-recognized IWGP Heavyweight title.
So looking up and down this card, New Japan's strategy for this Tokyo Dome show was to have their guys lose to the outsiders the entire night, basically.
Yeah.
Bold choice. It was a bold choice.
Bold as being kind. A lot of choices back then in New Japan where the kindest thing you could say about them was bold, and you could say a lot more disparaging things.
Best match for you. This is a two-match race for me. Which one do you say is your best match of the show?
It's a two-match race for me too. Between Nagata and Kazunari Murakami and Tanahashi and Katsuyori Shibata.
Correct. So we're both on the same page. Those are the two matches.
I mean, honestly, I could go either direction, but I'm going to go Tanahashi and Shibata. Just because how great both of these guys are, and how much we got to see of how deadly, how much of a killer Shibata was, and how much we saw here from Tanahashi in terms of selling, drawing sympathy. And we saw so many of the characteristics of Tanahashi that just in very short order, as I said, we're going to make him be the guy that brought New Japan back from the brink of death.
Those were my two favorite matches as well. I would also agree with you on Shibata Tanahashi for all the reasons you just mentioned. Worst match, for me, I'll let you go first. It's all things Akibono. That Akibono match was horrendous, and that is the worst match for me by far.
I can't say you're wrong, but I'm actually going to go with Bernard and Nakanishi.
Sure.
Because that is
a fine choice as well.
Third from the top, Giant Bernard's first match in the company as a New Japan contracted wrestler. And it's this, it's supposed to be this big coming out party establishing him as like the top regular, foreign monster. And it just didn't work at all. And when you're brought in, when a match is supposed to establish you as the new Vader and you have the crowd laughing in a non-comedy match 3 or 4 times, not good.
Or having no reaction. You mentioned the cavernous noise. I mean, the yelling that Bernard does in his match with no crowd reaction here. And not a sold out dome. You could hear, it sounded cavernous and it sounded, it wasn't great. So yeah,
this was the most noticeable of it being a half empty at best Tokyo Dome was in this match by far.
So a lot of good stuff on this show, though. Definitely go out of your way to see, those I think 4 or 5 matches we called out as must watches. Definitely.
Yeah, that 3-pack for sure of Nagata Murakami, Kanemoto Otani, and Shibata Tanahashi, and then the Lesnar Nakamura match. You can find it for free on YouTube, and it's a it's a hell of a curiosity, if not a outright great match.
Yeah, you mentioned that we'll post the link on our Twitter, and every single Thursday we'll post on Twitter, Instagram, all of our social media what event that week's episode will cover. So make sure you're following us on all social media platforms. Twitter and Instagram, it's at WrestleAtRandom, Facebook.com/WrestlingAtRandom. And all of those links can be found, including the entire back catalog of this podcast, at WrestlingAtRandom.com. So please rate, review, recommend the show to your friends. Tell your former wrestling fan friends about us. Tell your current wrestling fan friends about us. We rely on your word of mouth to spread the word about this show. So please continue to subscribe, rate, and review. Help others find this show. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. I want to thank you for joining us, Adam.
Definitely. Thank you, Jeremy. I'm going to be very interested to see what the randomizer gives us next. We've had quite the variety over the last couple months. So yeah, I just please not another WCW Russo era show, please.
And with that, I want to thank everyone for listening. We'll talk to you again next time.